Adelante, por favor.
Gracias. Hola, ¿qué tal? Buenos días a todos. Muchas gracias por estar en este segundo día de nuestra conferencia, el Congreso de Formación Docente en Lenguas. Y para mí es un gusto darles la bienvenida. Voy a cambiar a inglés, dado que nuestro invitado ya está aquí presente. It is with great pleasure that I introduce Professor Vincent Greenier. He's an associate professor of English at the American University of Sharjah. He has been a language teacher and teacher educator for more than 2 decades, holding positions in the United States, South Korea, New Zealand, the United Kingdom, and the United Arab Emirates. His main research interests include creative approaches to language teaching and learning, leadership and professionalism in ELT, language teacher education, language teacher identity, and innovative approaches to qualitative research. And his articles can be found in TESOL Quarterly, System, Journal of Education for Teaching, Teacher and Teacher Education, and others. And today he's going to present this conference that is called Teacherpreneurship, a new endeavor in TESOL professional development. So welcome, Vincent, and thank you very much for being here with us. The floor is yours.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Very much appreciate it. Thank you for having me, for inviting me to give a talk. I'm very pleased to be here and to talk to everybody today. So thank you. All right. So yes, what is teacherpreneurship? Well, clearly it's a portmanteau, a combination of two words that I'm sure you could figure out. Teacher. Oops. How do I move the slide here? Okay, here. Teacher and entrepreneur. So what does it mean? And what am I going to talk about? Well, this term entrepreneur, I think we all know what a teacher is, hopefully. And we probably know what an entrepreneur is, but I'll give you the definition, a definition that I like this is from Tech Target magazine or something. I chose this because I really liked the first part of it. So it says, an entrepreneur is an individual who identifies a need in the marketplace and works to fill it. The term historically has been applied to an individual who starts a business, seeing the ability to fulfill that identified need as an economic opportunity. Well, I'm not going to teach you how to start a business because I'm not a businessman, and I'm not a business professor. But you can think about the possibilities and the potential for what's possible in the marketplace as we go through this. But what I really want to talk about, and the reason I call this teacherpreneurship, a new endeavor in professional development and teacher training as well, is because I want to talk about an entrepreneur mindset. Teachers bringing to the classroom, bringing to their schools, bringing to the educational ecosystem in their country this entrepreneur mindset, this idea, this objective, this ultimate goal of identifying the needs in the marketplace being the school in this metaphor, um, and bringing change and trying their best to fill that space, that need. And teachers, as I will talk about as I go through this, are really the ones best positioned to do this. Unfortunately, the bureaucratic system of education and the policymakers and the textbooks, a lot of that is out of teachers' hands. I understand, but hopefully that can change, and I think that change often begins with teachers, and I'll give evidence for that, and also kind of hopefully explain how that can happen. So, what is an entrepreneur mindset? Well, again, I'm not a businessman, but the research says that these are the many characteristics of an entrepreneur. Risk-taking, so these are, traits and skills and knowledge. Risk-taking, being creative, a problem solver, resiliency, being resilient, not giving up easily, right? Entrepreneurs can't give up. Usually things don't go right out of the gate. A lot of entrepreneurs struggle. There's a lot of unexpected challenges, finances, And persistence is key for building a business, and of course for being a teacher, and especially for being a teacher who wants change. You have to be resilient. Some of the other characteristics here are strategic, working within the system, sometimes against the system, but working, uh, you know, in a systematic way in order to fill the need or to make the change that you think is necessary. You have to be strategic. You have to get the right people on board, and the right people to help you. Of course, that requires being an effective communicator, a collaborator, being relationship minded, as teachers, I hope, should be. I know it seems like as teachers, we often work in silos. We work alone, and we're just us in our classroom. Um, with our students, but hopefully that's changing, and teachers understand the importance of building relationships, not just with their students, but with their co-teachers and their principal and other people within the school. Of course, entrepreneurs must have a growth mindset. They must endeavor to change and to grow. Of course, that's an essential aspect of professional development, which is the focus of today's talk. Yeah, the growth mindset is this whole body of research that began by with not was popularized, I should say, by Carol Dweck and others, about like we need to have uh, self-confidence that we can grow, that we can expand, that things can happen, and we can initiate them. Of course, entrepreneurs need to have ambiguity tolerance. They're not going to know everything right away. They're not going to know all the people involved when they want to make change, exactly who to talk to. Of course, they don't know exactly how it's going to go when they do it. It might be terrible the first time, which is why we need persistence. Um, they don't know how students are going to react. They don't know all the resources they need or the materials that they need, and they build on that. But in order to like go ahead and try something new, there has to be a degree of ambiguity tolerance to be able to accept that you don't know, but you're just going to go with it anyway, or just going to try it anyway. Persistence, very similar to resilience. Passionate, of course, entrepreneurs, like good teachers and like creative people, have to be passionate about what they do. They have to believe in what they do. They have to be motivated by what they do. Of course, they have to be disciplined. They have to do the groundwork, the research, build their plan, sell their plan. All of this requires a great deal of work and time and effort and discipline. They have to be flexible and adaptable. Again, everything's not going to go exactly how you plan the first time when you try something new in your classroom. They have to be a continuous learner. They have to be curious, which is, I think, essential. It's fundamental to an entrepreneur, fundamental to a good teacher, fundamental in pretty much any industry, to be curious, to want to try things new, to see how things will work, to learn from others, to learn from your mistakes. All of that requires this high degree of curiosity. And they have to be self-motivated, of course, as you know, and as we'll talk about. Uh, there often, at least in the beginning stages, isn't a lot of support. And, maybe other co-teachers go like, why do you want to do anything different? Why do you want to motivate? Why do you want to make this change? Just do what we're all doing, or just do what you've been doing. So it requires to be an entrepreneur. It requires, and to be a teacherpreneur, it requires a high degree of self-motivation. You want to do it because you believe in it. You know that it's right, and you are engaged with new concepts, and you want to try something new. And of course, you have to be future focused. You can't be thinking, oh, this is the way that we've always done. You can't be locked in tradition. If you're locked in tradition, then there's no innovation, and there's no opportunities. There's no affordances for change and to try something new. So you got to think about what's possible in the future, and always be thinking about the future. Now we're thinking about tech-driven innovations, and of course Gen AI and things like that, and how they might complement our job as a teacher. So you have to be future focused. You have to be thinking about how can this change take root, and how can it grow, and what is it going to achieve in the future? How is it going to improve what I do in my school and how we educate our students? And of course, a major factor of an entrepreneur that kind of encompasses all the things I've talked about is you have to be optimistic. And as I go through this and I talk about this today, I know there'll be a great deal of, I anticipate there'll be some cynicism or some skepticism. And again, you'll be thinking, yeah, we want to do these changes and we want this in our professional development programs and stuff, but it's not supported by what is it, the SEP, right? It's not supported by the Ministry of Education. It's not my principal's not really supporting it, and I have to prepare students for exams, and I have these materials, these terrible textbooks. I don't know, maybe the textbooks are good. I shouldn't call them terrible. But I have these textbooks I have to teach from. I have this particular set of objectives and curriculums. It's a lot of teaching. It can be a lot of box checking. I have to get through these certain things. And I know I understand all these things. As Dr. Morris said, I've been a teacher for 2 decades and I've encountered all of them, but I've always still tried to innovate and improve my school and in any way that I can. So I implore you, I beg you to hold on to a degree of optimism as I proceed through this lecture today, because it's really important. And your optimism, I believe, is warranted. Optimism is warranted here because things are changing, and we've seen lots of changes around the world, and I'll cover some of those. And I love this quote, to back up my plea for optimism. This quote by James Baldwin, who said, "Those who say it can't be done are usually interrupted by others doing it." And it is being done around the world. Teacherpreneurship, teacher-led change is happening around the world. And so let me give you some examples of that to show you the way that teachers have led change. One really interesting and compelling example is in India. Teachers in low-resourced, sort of impoverished areas of India, states in India that are more rural and, as I said, lower resourced. It is teachers. There's a good number of lectures, TED Talks and lectures about teachers who have led amazing change in as I said, low resourced and really like farming community schools in India that have brought technology in the classroom because they focused on local changes to teacher training, empowering teachers, and helping teachers find and locate these resources. So they sought out NGOs and found educational foundations, and they were able to scale the things that they needed. I won't go into any, I know this is in India, so I won't go into any more detail, but just one example of where teachers are really leading change. China, the double reduction policy, I don't know how many of you are familiar with that, but China has a very intensive schooling environment. It's very competitive. The days are very long. It's very test driven. Everything accumulates in what is called the Gaokao. I mean, I think probably there's a similar case in Mexico. It all accumulates. The Gaokao is the college entrance exam, and everything from like 5th grade is like geared towards passing the Gaokao. So teachers said, I can't really teach. All the students and parents want is for me to teach to this test. So, the double reduction policy isn't perfect, and there are some issues with it, but I won't get into that. But it was really a teacher initiated thing saying we need less focus on the test. We need more time to do creative things in the classroom. We need more time to build relationships with our students. We need to teach other skills rather than just test taking skills for our students. And the double reduction is less private education and less homework and less focus on the test. So less homework and less focus on the test was one thing, and then less after school education was the other part of the double reduction. And it seems like it's had a pretty good effect on children's well-being and teachers' well-being and the educational processes in general. In South Korea, this change has been going on. There's been a struggle. I worked in South Korea for 12 years, so I know the context quite well. So I'll try not to talk about it or slam it too much here. But the this was really teacher-led, teacher unions in Korea saying this is, again, same thing as China. It's too intense. There's too much focus on the test. Students don't have time to do anything fun. Students don't care about learning English. They only care about grammar and vocabulary because that's what they're being tested on. They don't care about um, engaging with the concepts that they're learning in any subject because if it's not on the test or it's not helping them prepare for the test, they don't care. So a major change in Korea over the last decade and really more feverishly in the last 5 years is more school-initiated extracurricular activities like we have in America. In America, as you may know, we have like sports teams and we have drama and we have debate clubs and chess clubs. And Korea has began to implement those things and adapt those after-school clubs and activities, getting students to relax and have fun, and more restrictions on after-school study. When I first went to Korea in 2004, 2004, I remember coming home. I won't say where I was coming home from, but it was like 1 a.m. And I saw hordes of students walking through the street coming from private education schools at 1 o'clock in the morning. So many of you might be familiar with this phenomenon in East Asia. So they've worked really hard to reduce that kind of environment. And this was all led by teachers saying we can't have students going to private English schools until 2 o'clock in the morning and then coming back at 7 a.m. into my classroom. They're burnt out. In Singapore, many schools, kind of inspired by the education system in Finland, Singapore, which was also quite test intensive, began to use project-based learning. And then it's spread like rapid fire. Again, one teacher probably or one school said, let's try this, let's do this. It's really interesting. Maybe they went to a conference like this and they were like, I'm going to try project-based learning, and students loved it and they learned and it grew, and now it's all throughout the schools in Singapore. In the UAE, where I'm at now, recently, in the last 5 years, they've changed high school streams. I don't know if this is a good thing. You judge if this is a good thing, but they've made high school a little bit more like university, where at a certain point, students choose, I want to be an engineer, or I want to go into sciences, or I want to go into social sciences, English, or philosophy, or psychology, or whatever. And they've created programs within schools to orientate and to guide or to support students towards what they want to do as a career, what they're going to study in university, rather than everybody studying the same thing. Now there are streams for like subject focus streams. Again, you judge if that's a good thing. I don't know, but it's a teacher-led innovation. Teachers had this idea of like, why at grade 12 am I teaching, English or whatever to a student that wants to be an engineer? Not to say they don't need English. They definitely need English, but they thought like students should be preparing earlier for their career. In Andorra, they've embraced, I don't know a lot about Andorra, but just some research that I've done, they've really embraced technology and digital literacy skills, especially in the last 4 or 5 years, and they're really focused on teaching that to their middle school and high school students. So what about Mexico? Well, what changes are teachers driving and insisting upon in Mexico, even if they haven't happened yet? I don't know. I really don't know. But I do know in the higher education, through my research with Dr. Mora, teachers are leading the EMI initiatives in higher education. And I'm really curious of what changes they're leading or initiating or desiring in the high school and even earlier than that. What changes are needed in Mexico? You could think about that. I don't know, so you'll have to tell me at the end. But think about that as I go through the rest of the talk. I like this quote by Rob Grimshaw, who for a long time, for I think 7 or 8 years, led the TES Global Education and Ed Tech Company. And I love this quote. He said, "Teachers make the best entrepreneurs. Teachers make the best entrepreneurs, the best innovators, fundraisers, and problem solvers are often found at the front of the classroom. Because teachers can constantly adapt, manage diverse needs, secure resources, and create new solutions in dynamic learning environments. The students are always changing, requirements are always changing. In many cases, materials are often changing. Like this year, you're going to teach this textbook. So things are often changing. So it's a very dynamic environment. They're teaching skills that directly translate to the demands of entrepreneurship and innovation. So teachers, I really agree with this quote. I believe that teachers, from my own experience and of meeting many teachers and having the opportunity as a teacher trainer to teach many teachers, I believe that it's true. Teachers really are the ultimate problem solvers, the ultimate fundraisers, the ultimate innovators, and they are the ones that need to lead change. Another thing I want you to think about as I go through this talk, again, as a platform for optimism, is I want you to think about who it is that you work for. Do you work for the Ministry of Education? I think this is right in Mexico, the Secretaria my Spanish is very bad. I won't try to pronounce it. But the SEP, do you work for the local Board of Education? Do you work for your school? Do you work for your principal? Because the thing about entrepreneurs and entrepreneurship is many people become entrepreneurs because they don't want to work for anybody, right? They have this amazing idea and they want to do it. They want to implement it. They don't want to work for the company. The company's not listening to them. So they want to lead change on their own. But I know in the school system, you can't do that. I'm not encouraging you to do that. In fact, a major point here are teacherpreneurs lead but don't leave. They are in the classroom and they are leading this change. But just on a philosophical, on a motivational level, I want you to think about who it is that you work for. And I think all of these are true that I have listed here. But hopefully your answer is also your students, and you want to make change for your students. You know what they need, what can help them, what their goals are. So hopefully some of you, as I read that list, thought, no, I work for my students. I'm a teacher. That's what my calling was. And if you're a teacher, then also hopefully your answer was also yourself, because we're probably not in the teaching profession for money or fame or to get a pat on the back from our director or the policymakers. Hopefully you do it because it was a calling and you love it and it's important to you, and the students that you teach are important to you, and education in general is important to you. So hopefully the answer in part is yes, I work for these other policymakers and agencies and groups and people, but also I work for my students and myself. And if that is part of your answer, then you're on the right path to being a teacherpreneur, because as I said, entrepreneurs want to make change. They want to innovate, and they want to do it because they feel like they can fill a need. They can make an important change. So what is TESOL, teacherpreneurship? Well, again, teacherpreneurship is often associated with teachers who leverage their skills and intrepidness to initiate pedagogical ventures or businesses that are profit-oriented. I'm not encouraging you to do that. This talk today, again, is not about how to build a business, how to teach online, how to sell your teaching approach or anything like that. But it's about becoming an innovator, wanting to become an innovator, thinking about teacherpreneurship as a way that you can initiate change and lead change in your classroom. So here's the definition that I came up with that I like. In TESOL, teacherpreneurship are teachers who are deeply committed to their work and strive to improve the quality of learning through creativity and innovation, and consistently display extensive knowledge, leadership, persistence, a commitment to their students and colleagues, a commitment to their colleagues as well. They want to improve things for them, for the entire ecosystem of their school, and the ability to share, and very importantly, the ability to share and perhaps to some extent sell their ideas to others, to share and convince others, let's try this, we can do this, we can make this change. We all know this is an issue. Let's do this together. So, and they have the knowledge, the persistence, the creativity, and the communication skills to at least implement it and hopefully achieve their goals. So who are teacherpreneurs? Again, teacherpreneurs are those that lead but don't leave. So I want to make that very clear. I put here, teacherpreneurs are classroom experts who teach students regularly in their classroom. They're not YouTube. I'm not talking about people who have YouTube channels and make some revenue there. And I'm not talking about the principals or the curriculum makers either. I'm talking about the teachers in the classroom who teach the students regularly. But they also, I know this is a stretch, this requires optimism and lowering our degree of cynicism probably, but also have time and space and ideally incentive. I know, ideally being the operative word there, incentive to spread their ideas and practices to colleagues, as well as to administrators and policymakers and parents and community leaders. To say, our students need this. This is what they really need. We can do this together. Here is one idea that I have. It might be an extracurricular activity for an English club or something like that. It might be about less focus on some of the grammatical concepts in the textbook and more focus on communicative strategies, things like that. So without leaving the classroom, teacherpreneurs will serve as mentors. This is very important. Curriculum publishers and curators, student assessment analysts. Are we really testing what we want students to learn? Is this test really teaching what we taught them? Is this the skills that we really need to develop? Is the test testing the skills that students really need? Edu-game inventors. I'll give some examples later in today's lecture of some edu-games that I trialed and implemented in my teaching. They're also community organizers and policy researchers and initiators of innovation. So all of this is from Berry 2013. Teacherpreneurs are visionaries. So again, if you work for your students and you work for you have, I believe that you have a vision of what education should be, what you want it to be, what your classroom should look like. So they are visionaries and dreamers who imagine and long for a better educational system and better outcomes for their students. And, this is just a good teacher, right? This is just describing good teachers, really. Teacherpreneurism, that's harder to say than teacherpreneurship for some reason. Teacherpreneurism is not so much about a new revenue stream for teachers, I've emphasized that several times, as it is for promoting and generating a new culture of responsive and collective innovation in education. That's why I called this today's talk a new endeavor for professional development and teacher training, because we want to create this culture in our professional development programs that is responsive to students' needs and promotes collective innovation within our schools and embraces and values and strongly encourages teachers to do this. Which is my next point. So why do we need teacherpreneurship in TESOL professional development? Well, I have a very extensive list here, I think, but not exhaustive. I think you can think of other reasons. Excuse me. Teachers are at the forefront of change in their classrooms and have the potential to transform education from the inside out. Perhaps for as long as public education has been a thing, it's been controlled from top down. But administrators, policymakers, board of educators, they may have been teachers, 25 years ago. They don't really know what's going on in the classroom today. Textbook makers, maybe they get some feedback or they know the general kind of, national objectives for education, but they don't know the realities of the classroom, of course, like the teachers do. So the directionality needs to change. It needs to be from the inside out. It needs to be from bottom. If you hopefully teachers don't think of themselves at the bottom, but again, if we're being if we have a degree of cynicism, then you may conceptualize yourself that way. But just to say bottom up, meaning it's not being policy driven. It's from it's being teacher driven. So teachers, this is a major point here, is that teachers know what is going on in the classroom. They know what their students need. They know what the challenges are. They know what the obstacles to learning are. They know like why students are disinterested. They know. For language teachers particularly, they know the realities of proficiency, different proficiencies in their classroom and proficiency issues among students. And I don't think many boards of education around the world really know the realities of the classroom. It's certainly not like the teachers do. To the second point, teachers motivate and mobilize others towards ambitious initiatives. We need teachers to be motivated for change. We all know the teacher that just goes, well, maybe not all of us. Hopefully you don't. Hopefully you don't know this teacher, but we do. I think most of us have heard, at least, of a teacher that just does what they've always done and what they think is expected of them. Not to say the bare minimum necessarily, but just, they have no interest in innovating. And you can have your opinion about that teacher, but we can't have a whole ecosystem. We can't have a whole school of those type of teachers. Perhaps they serve a particular role of being devil's advocate or being, the one who presents the challenges. But we need teachers that are motivated to start initiatives and make change. And I believe, and I'll talk about it at length, we need to start this in teacher training programs and professional development opportunities and programs as well. So we need to inspire students. We need to inspire, teachers. We need to inspire teachers to be ambitious to make change and want to make change and believe that they can make change. Teachers can launch initiatives and educational campaigns within their schools. So we want, maybe as part of a professional development program or a teacher training program, we can have teachers at least identify campaigns that they might start in their school. Again, it might be something for helping struggling students. It might be bringing in new technologies into their school that they're aware of, but the school doesn't use. It might be about starting English clubs or drama clubs or new extracurricular activities. We want teachers to initiate these campaigns, and I believe this, as I said, starts early on. We can't tell a teacher who's been teaching for 20 years, you should initiate change, right? It's a little late at that point. So, but not entirely, but we want to start early. Teachers can be and usually are status quo disruptors and early adopters of new teaching approaches and technologies. It really is the teachers that come, maybe they studied at a university with a really inspiring and motivating teachers that loves project-based learning, and so they or maybe they studied abroad and they learned a new technique that's happening in Finland or the UK or the US or wherever, and they wanted to bring it into their school. These are almost always teacher initiated. Like the incentive is much lower for the Board of Education to change the education system than it is for teachers who really need to reach their learners and help their learners, right? So many changes, as I gave examples of around the world. It's teachers that bring in new technologies. Like I had no idea what Miro or Padlet was, and certainly my university or the UK education system was not telling me, hey, there's these really great things like Socrative and Miro and Padlet. It was a co-teacher who brought it in and said, this is how we can use this. Let's try this, and we did. Entrepreneurs may be the antidote to the resistance to change in educational systems. I believe that teachers, as I said, they are the disruptors. The teachers are the antidote to stagnant educational policy that doesn't change for decades, or a test-driven focus that is pervasive and continues in many educational systems. The teachers are the disruptors of that. They were in China, they were in South Korea, they have been in Singapore and in other places, and they continue to be the disruptors of this kind of status quo. As I said, teachers know what's going on in the classroom, and they have to bring it to the Board of Education, or they have to bring it to the policymakers or even their principal to say, what we're doing isn't working, and here is why. And we need to make these changes, and I have some ideas on how we can do that. And number 6, there is a long-standing need to bridge the gap between those who teach in schools and those that lead them, a point that I've made several times already. We need to be collaborative. It doesn't need to be top-down or even bottom-up. It doesn't have to be disparate and disconnected. It doesn't have to be education, doesn't have to be policy driven even. It doesn't have to be, step by step. Let's make this change and then that change. It requires collaboration, and there has long been a gap, as I've already expressed several times so far, between what teachers do in the classroom and what they need in the classroom and what their students need in the classroom, and what the administrators or the policymakers know about. And I put lead here in parentheses or in quotation marks, not to be mean, because I'm sure there is good leadership at the policymaker level, but it tends to be more like management or directives than leadership at the higher levels. This is what we're going to do. This is how you're going to do it. And we need more communication and collaboration. Again, this requires optimism, I know, but it also requires teacherpreneurship, because teachers lead these changes. I firmly believe that. So how can we do it? What are the skills? What are the ways? What are the things that we can do in teacher training and professional development programs, and in our own professional development, even without these formal programs? So I want to talk about 3 things that it requires and that teachers can do, and the things that we can integrate and implement in teacher professional development in TESOL. And these are my 3 streams of research interest: creativity, leadership, and mindfulness. So for each one, I'll talk about 3 qualities or 3 characteristics that we can think about and I believe effectively include and efficiently integrate into teacher education and teacher professional development programs. So the first is creativity. Creativity, I think, is obvious. You can see how many of the teacherpreneurship qualities overlap with creativity, characteristics of creativity. Of course, people who are creative are risk takers. They have ambiguity tolerance, they have passion, they have a degree of resilience. If you want to be creative, you have to be resilient. You have to keep trying to do something new and have people like it. They're problem solvers. Creative people are problem solvers, and creative people are also usually optimistic, but they have a balance between cynicism or skepticism and optimism, which, I think entrepreneurs and teachers do as well. So I'll talk about 3 characteristics of creativity, but oops. But the other quality that I will talk about is leadership, which is a dynamic set of qualities, characteristics, and behaviors exhibited inside and outside the classroom, which positively influence learners, not only in their learning, but also in their lives. So I'm going to talk about, there is a long list of qualities of teacher leadership in language teaching, but I'm going to talk about 3. And mindfulness, which is about being present with and to your inner experience, as well as being present in your environment and recognizing and responding to you and your thoughts and emotions in a non-judgmental way. So thinking, being kind of metacognitive, thinking about your thinking, thinking about your feelings, thinking about your emotions, and not being analytical and critically reflective, but not judgmental of yourself. So I'll get to that one in a bit. All right, the first one I want to talk about is creativity and the teacherpreneur. So the first aspect of creativity that I've already touched on several times that I think is fundamental, it's essential, it's perhaps primary to teacherpreneurship and teacher education programs and professional development programs, and that is collaboration. Teachers can't do it alone. They are often the initiators of change. They have the ideas, they know what's going on, but they can't do it alone. They need help, whether it's colleagues, well, first from colleagues and then from their principals and their teacher trainers, perhaps, and their mentors, which I'm going to talk about later. But they need help, and it's a change in education, and having this developing a teacherpreneur mindset in our teachers requires a high degree of collaboration, and change itself requires a high degree of collaboration. So I put here, teachers can initiate change in the curriculum, materials, assessment, learning technologies, but for real success, dynamic, ongoing, bringing in new people all the time, dynamic collaboration is required. Teacherpreneurs work with others, just like entrepreneurs can't do it. They can't start a business by themselves. I mean, we could think of amazing entrepreneurs like Steve Jobs or others that have, created this great innovation. They didn't do it alone. They had a large network of funders, technicians, mentors, even friends that gave them ideas or listen to them, that they could bounce ideas off. So they didn't do it alone. They had a lot of help. So this for teachers, this includes colleagues, students, parents, administrators, organizations that are interested in, and maybe even researchers that are interested in education and educational change, outside agencies and other stakeholders to enact change. So they need to find these sources. Like I said, teacherpreneurs are great fundraisers, they're great communicators, they are persistent, and so they seek out the help that they need in order to initiate change, and they get other people on board. The second quality that I think teacherpreneurship requires, that I believe we can really, truly, directly teach in professional development programs, particularly ones that involve practicums. Well, and I'll kind of summarize that later. That we can teach teachers to be risk takers. I know it's hard. I know, again, cynicism and optimism balance, but we can teach teachers to be risk takers, and I believe I have, and I myself was taught to be a risk taker in the classroom. So teacherpreneurs launch initiatives and accept responsibility for the results. They're willing, if something doesn't go well, to take responsibility. That didn't go well, let me try it a different way, and to make the changes that they need necessary. But again, be persistent and accept that they're not going to get everything right the first time, but that's part of risk taking. That's part of innovation. Teacherpreneurs may take measured risks. They go outside their comfort zone, which is extremely important, and they solve problems along the way. And the last factor for meaningful work, or the last factor for creativity, is meaningful work. So teacherpreneurs and teachers in general don't make change just to be a nuisance to their principal or to annoy their students or to just because they're bored and they think, their life will be made easier by by doing project-based learning or design-based learning or, trying something new. No, they engage in these things because the students' lives are meaningful to them, and their work as a teacher, as an educator, is meaningful to them. And I think this is a lot about inspiring teachers in professional development programs to really, not just care. Hopefully all teachers care, but to act on their intuition about how they can make their students' lives better and their students' lives better and their students' outcomes better, and how they can help themselves enjoy teaching more as well. So teacherpreneurs, like entrepreneurs, are successful because they care about what they do and they see real value in what they bring to the lives of others. So meaningful work helps teachers sustain their efforts. You know, it's easy to give up. Okay, I want to try this, but if it's meaningful to teachers, if they love it, if they love their students and they really want to improve their lives and their learning, then they will persist and they will sustain this effort of trying something new. Um, and they remain in the field to see their ideas through. So teachers engage in consequential endeavors, listen to others, ask thoughtful questions, and appreciate diverse viewpoints. All of this is required for teachers to engage in meaningful work and to continue that meaningful work through the challenges it's more than likely to bring. So a personal anecdote. I was doing my doctoral research on project-based learning in language education with elementary school students. Actually, they were middle school students. It was over the course of a year, so they switched from elementary to middle school. But I thought, you know, I was teaching in a university, in a teacher's college. I was teaching future language teachers, and I thought, you know, let me try this with my university students. So I started using project-based learning. So to teach them some teaching concepts and some linguistic concepts as well, I had them design board games. So these are university students engaging in project-based learning, and the students loved it. And the other teacher that I was working with said, I'm going to try that too. Let me try that. What kind? And we brainstormed projects that they could do for his class, which was a teaching methodology class. And he tried it out as well. I don't have pictures from his class. And then when I was teaching later on, I was teaching high school students, and I had them try, you know, art. I love art, so I was like, let me have them do a collage. And while they were making it, the owner of the school was at a private language school. The owner of the school came in and said, you know, what the heck are they doing? Why are they painting? And I said, no, this is good. They're negotiating ideas. They're using the terms from the textbook. They're developing this. And then, of course, he came in a week later and they weren't talking. They were just staring at their painting. And but I said, no, this is going to be good. And in the end, the students ended up talking a lot throughout this project, renegotiating ideas, debating ideas, and then, of course, presenting their collage at the end of it. So I thought I was going to get fired at points, but I persisted, and the students loved it. And in the end, the principal said, "Yeah, do that again. Do something else like that." They really like that. So you know, a success story in the end, and something that was in some ways scaled up as well at the school. They did more of these projects. The next skill that I want to talk about, the next thing that I want to talk about that needs to happen in I'm sorry, in professional development programs is there needs to be more focus on leadership. And leaders, teacherpreneurs are leaders, of course. As I said, they are the ones that initiate change and initiate suggest and promote and persist with changes in their school, with their vision and their values for what education should be. So they need to be leaders. And the major thing that we really need to focus on in professional development programs, and again, I know there's a degree of cynicism here, that you know, they're going up against policymakers and directives and the you know, the assessment preparation, test preparation, and having to do the textbooks, and I'm aware of all of this, but we really need to empower teachers. We need empowered teachers in the classroom, and we do this through professional development programs that focus on leadership development in the classroom level, and then in the school level as well. So I put empowerment first requires that teachers become aware of the issues affecting the organizational environment, their institution, their school, and that they feel emboldened to challenge institutional and societal norms to enact the changes they see necessary for improving outcomes. And this might be social justice initiatives. This might be you know, differentiated learning objectives. It might be a range of different things that they think that they need, but they feel empowered. They feel that they can make change, and in many ways that it's up to them to make these changes, or at least suggest them and promote them and try to get them started. When teachers recognize and opine means give their opinion, they share their opinions on current and future challenges, they are better prepared to identify and become involved in opportunities for change. Thus, a sense of empowerment is not simply an institutional matter. Empowered mindsets must begin in teacher education, teacher training, and professional development programs. They've really ongoing professional development programs. Teachers really need to hear through professional development programs that they can be leaders in their classroom, in their schools, and that change is possible. And to do that, they need to feel empowered. They need to believe that they can make change. They can make real change. Another part of leadership is reflective practice. I know I'm getting a little short on time here, right? So I'm speeding up a bit. Reflective practice, teacherpreneurs must gather information about what is needed in their school and then think about it. Think about how they can make these changes and why they want to make these changes and why these changes are important to them, and then think about action. What's the best course of action? Reflection, teacher reflection, is a sustained activity that is continuously enacted throughout an innovation or organizational change. It's a sustained activity. It's interesting that we all, as researchers and maybe as teachers, we know about reflective practice. I think it's been well promoted in the literature in TESOL, and many of you probably did it in your teacher education programs, and as teachers, we teach it. But we don't do it in the classroom. At least I did. Hopefully you do. But when I was in the classroom, I really didn't. Maybe I felt like I didn't have time to reflect and to think about my teaching and to think about what my students need and how I can make changes. So we need to teach this in professional development programs and teacher education programs. We really need to push this idea into the classroom and into their careers, not just as an assignment in their methodologies course. Reflection provides grounded self-knowledge and actively encourages a desire for feedback. And the last thing under leadership is we need relationship building, which is similar to collaboration, I know, in creativity, but slightly different. Relationship building, entrepreneurs, as I said, develop an ecosystem around them of support, of cynics or people who are critical to help them develop their ideas. And they develop strong relationships with the people that can help them as well. So teacherpreneurs is as much about building relationships and establishing a network of like-minded innovators, other teachers, other principals that are on board with their ideas, and find ways to implement them. Improvement in teaching is a collective rather than an individual enterprise, requiring trust and connection, not just cooperation. The last thing, again, I'll go a little bit quickly through this, but I think maybe this might be the most important one and the one that's most nascent and perhaps most lacking in professional development programs in TESOL. But it's growing. The body of literature is growing on this, and its practice in teacher education is becoming a little bit more prevalent, but I still think it's very much lacking in professional development programs and maybe in teaching in general, and that is mindfulness. So 3 aspects of mindfulness that I think are really important for the teacherpreneur and for professional development is to communicate through challenges. If you want to be an innovator, it's going to be difficult. You're going to need to share your thoughts and share your ideas and share your challenges and obstacles and frustrations, and also your achievements and your success and your brilliant ideas and to really think things through with others, and again to share both the struggles and the rewards of this innovation that you're leading. So communicate your ideas clearly and listen to others. Confront established yet ineffective and detrimental structures and routines. And again, communicating through them, sharing your feelings. And very importantly, find a mentor and be a mentor. We need more mentorship in professional development programs and teacher education. This is an essential ingredient to teacherpreneurship and to sustained careers in general. And I think we need to focus on it more in professional development programs and seek to understand different viewpoints and empathize with others. Another element of mindfulness that I think we need to expressively um, focus on in professional development programs is encouraging students to be open to experience, to embrace the unexpected, to understand negative emotions or uncertainty are inevitable in teaching. You're going to have them, but they can also be a catalyst for change. They can also make you want to change things if you reflect and you embrace the challenge of these negative feelings or these negative circumstances in your school or your community, then you want to change. So they can be a catalyst for change. Teacherpreneurship, like entrepreneurship, requires a leap of faith. And the last aspect of mindfulness that I think is important for teacherpreneurship is acting with awareness, being aware of your feelings in the moment. And I think I really truly believe we can teach this in teacher education and professional development programs through a number of different activities. And again, help teachers sustain this throughout their career. So be aware of your feelings in the moment, how you're feeling in the classroom, if you're frustrated, if you're enjoying yourself, what you think students are thinking, all of those things that are going through your mind as a teacher. Recognize your areas of strength, but don't hide from your perceived weaknesses. Try to develop your weaknesses. Step forward and look for opportunities to lead change and drive innovation. Acting with awareness, understanding what needs to be done and what your strengths are and what you can do to drive innovation and change. And be conscious of one's preconceived notions and judgments of yourself and others. So all of this is from the mindfulness literature. So there it is. These are the characteristics of teacherpreneurship: collaboration, risk-taking, meaningful work, empowerment, reflective practice, relationship building, communicating through challenges, openness to experience, and acting with awareness. And I believe all of these can be taught in professional development programs. They can be developed through teacher professional development, both on your own and through programs. And we should really be focusing on these skills more. So the role of professional development in teacherpreneurship, taking these qualities and putting them into action-oriented ideas, exploration and experimentation, a greater emphasis on tailored and personalized instruction, a deeper and more direct focus on teachers' values and teachers' vision. We need, from the teacher training, the practicum, ongoing professional development, we need to ask teachers, what are your values as a teacher? What is your vision? What do you want to change? What do you want to improve? What do you think you can do to help your school? Attention to local culture and customs, but also greater innovation and integration of global trends and best practices. We need to encourage and support an entrepreneurial spirit in teachers. We need to provide opportunities and ideally incentives, as I said before, for teacher-led innovation, beginning early in their career. We need to make teachers believe from the beginning, early on, that they can initiate and activate change. Strengthened and sustained mentorship programs. I think mentorship is pivotal in a teacher's career and their ability to become a teacherpreneur and lead change. And greater focus on creativity, leadership, and mindfulness. So here's finally my call to action. I'll just put all these on the screen. TESOL is changing at a rapid pace, and we need teacherpreneurs to lead this change, and we need to do it through professional development. Change is needed in pedagogy, planning, policy, and professional development. EFL education, perhaps because of its importance and large investment for many nations, particularly in East Asia, but I suspect in Mexico as well, it has long been administrated from top down, but it's time for teachers to lead change, for teachers to cultivate innovation from bottom up. And because of the multidimensional diversity in TESOL classrooms, different student levels, different backgrounds, different socioeconomic backgrounds, different life experiences, our entrepreneurial spirit is required to prepare and improve our learners and to serve our communities. And to embrace diversity, ensure equity, and improve learning, teachers are best situated to initiate innovation. So let's make teacherpreneurship part of teacher education and part of every sort of professional development that we teach and that we engage in. And again, I know that this requires optimism, but I want you to hold on to that optimism, because I think, through your own efforts in teacher professional development and through the changes that we make to teacher training and professional development, it really can be done. So I leave you with this idea of cutting up this "I can't do it." Whether you're a teacher in the classroom, believe that you can do it, believe that you can initiate change. Or if you're a teacher trainer or teacher educator, also believe that you can make change and that your students can make future-oriented change. So believe that you can do it. Hold on to that optimism with a healthy degree of cynicism. But yeah, these are the changes that I believe are possible and that need to be made in teacher education and professional development. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Vincent Greenier, for such an insightful talk. Teacherpreneurship clearly touches on creativity and leadership and mindfulness, and all of these are like important aspects in our profession. Now, I would like to open the floor to the audience and to see if they have any questions or reflections that they would like to share. Anybody?
Yes, me. Hello. Oh, well,
Hello.
I didn't raise my hand, sorry.
That's
No,
okay,
that's
go
okay.
ahead.
Okay. Well, I don't want to be so, let us say, well, I'm a little bit of skeptical about this because it is not the context of Mexico. And I would like to say that it is not the same context for teachers who are teaching a native language. It is totally a different scenario. So I think although you are giving an excellent talk on teaching English as a second language, it applies to that. But sometimes, even if we want to be very enthusiastic, even if we want to apply all what we would like to do and to improve our teaching, I think it is not always so easy to do it. Especially for teachers who have got a very sort of chaotic context. So yeah, believe me, just in a few, probably in half an hour, I give a talk about a language which has got not official alphabet, and it is just a problem for teachers. Yeah, it is not. No, there is not just one single alphabet for a language. It is not official. So just imagine you speak English, and Canadians and Australians, somehow there are some differences in the alphabet, a little bit, or on some vocabulary. But just imagine that you have got some symbols that are different from Australian, from England, from America. So this is a problem. And it is a basic problem that some teachers who are teaching Purépecha face. So it is a whole context different. Although they would like to apply that, I think sometimes it is not so easy, and education certainly has got a different context. So, well, thank you. Yeah, thank you very much for all your enthusiasm and all your suggestions. But sometimes I think scenarios are this scene is quite different. That
So
what do you think?
What do you think is needed in your context?
What is needed is probably I don't know, because I do not I do not I dare say that I do not know, because I'm not a teacher of Purépecha. I'm just an observer.
Okay.
Okay, so this is what I see. I see another scenario. Probably teachers of Purépecha will tell you much better, they could give you an insight, a much better if they could tell you more about it, probably they could answer your question. But as an observer, as I see it from outside, they've got a very complex context. And if we want to apply some of the things that you have just told us, I think, yeah, enthusiasm, I'm sure that they are very enthusiastic, but sometimes enthusiasm goes down if you've got such another scenario different. So this is just what I wanted to say. Sometimes even if you have got a lot of suggestion and enthusiasm, sometimes you cannot apply it in other context. So it's difficult sometimes. That's all what I wanted to say.
Yes, I understand. I understand that the realities are often different, and yeah, I don't know the realities of your context or every context, but I think if for those of you who do know your context, I think maybe they can suggest some change that they think is important, and no, I think the key point is I think nothing's impossible. Change isn't impossible. It can be challenging and difficult, and yeah, I understand the realities of education, but I don't know the language that you're talking about exactly, but I can understand from what you told me how difficult that must be. Thank you for sharing. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We have some comments here in the chat, and from Andrea Martinez. Thank you so much, Vincent, for sharing this relevant information with us. In the state of Mexico, we are using TBL and CLIL projects to teach the language in context. Through these methods, we help our students to promote interaction, communication, among others, and critical thinking. Also, we have a lot of creative and innovative teachers who are creating new materials and implementing new approaches to respond to the latest educational reform called New Mexican School that has been a big challenge, but successful.
Excellent.
Yeah. Andrea?
Just a comment on that. Like, I did know that Mexico was implementing CLIL, and a good colleague of mine who you may know, Dario Banagas, who is at the University of Edinburgh, he was part of this change in writing the textbooks for CLIL in Argentina, and he said that we write we got some buy-in from the Ministry of Education, and we're writing textbooks, and there's a lot of materials for CLIL in general, but he said it is the teachers that are doing it, the teachers that are innovating and really effectively implementing CLIL, because it requires a lot of differentiated learning, a lot of personalized learning. Like some students can do CLIL at a high level. So CLIL, if there's anybody who doesn't know, CLIL is basically content-based instruction through English or the target language. So it's content, language, and integrated learning. So they're teaching subjects through English. And, some students can do it, some students can't. But yeah, I thought that was interesting and good to know Mexico teachers are really on the same doing the same thing, that it's really that change to CLIL in Argentina and other places is really happening at the classroom level thanks to innovative and dedicated teachers.
Yes.
And optimistic teachers. Yeah.
Yes, above all. So we have another comment here from Marlene Zúñiga. Support by institutions and of course money. Teacher development can be expensive here in Mexico.
Yeah, I know. So are they talking about public education or are they talking about private education?
I think both. I mean, it can be expensive in both.
Public education is expensive.
I mean, expensive for teachers because sometimes we actually have to give our own resources to provide for students, and private education because of the cost of tuition and all this.
Yeah, that's tough. That's unfortunate. Yeah, I mean, even that's true in other countries too. America as well. Teachers have to buy glue for their for their elementary school students. So yeah, low resource schools, but it doesn't mean that you can't teach in a low in low resource schools and even low tech schools and schools where there's a lot of students that come from disadvantaged backgrounds, this is really where innovation is perhaps needed most, and teacher-led innovation. They know the community, they know the parents, they know the students, they know the situation that the government, the central government doesn't know. Like the SEB or SEP in Mexico City does not know what's going on in, Oaxaca, state. Or those rural areas, they don't know. So in these really difficult situations, and that's why I talked about India earlier, like the teachers in this case are really teacherpreneurs are really needed. They're the ones really leading change. But yeah, as far as awards and incentives, and though I guess in those low resource schools, yeah, that's difficult. Because there's not a lot of incentive financially or otherwise for teachers to be doing these things. And in fact, it costs them more money to innovate. And that's really sad and unfortunate. Yeah, my uncle told me he worked for Ford Motor. This is going to sound irrelevant for a second, but like he worked for Ford Motor Company, and he told me one time he made, I won't say the amount of money, but he was paid a whole bunch of money because he just told the administrators, the people running the factory, he worked in a Ford Motor Company factory, that the hoses were always running. And if you just put the hoses here or did this or turn these hoses off, then the company would save hundreds of dollars. And so they did that. And then just for that suggestion, they paid him an ungodly amount of money. And I was like, imagine like the changes teachers could make if they were likewise incentivized to change and to drive this change and to just make suggestions. Teachers have hundreds of suggestions, but it could only, in many cases, it could cost them money. It could make their life more difficult. It could, so teachers, people in companies and people working for Google or Ford, they're like, oh, I have 100 great ideas, and they're incentivized to do so. And in fact, Google gives like certain amount of time to their employees to dabble. No such infrastructure or ecosystem in the world of education, particularly public education, and that's really sad. So I don't have a cure for the money issues, but I think again teachers can lead change. So if we really teach teachers how to be resourceful and innovative and to care, I think they can come up with amazing solutions.
Thank you. And we have one last comment here, comment and question. New primary school programs in the new Mexican school, which is the educational model here, are working with community projects. Do you think that, I guess it's teacherpreneurship, Micah, what you're referring to here, do you think that this can work with these projects? The objective of the projects is to learn while solving a social problem.
It's to learn what?
To learn while solving a social problem. At the same time, we're working with a project. They are learning about Mexico and the context and everything.
That's amazing. That's amazing. I love that. This is like Freirean, Paulo Freire, justice and change-oriented education, to think about a problem. So is this something that the teacher led, or is this a project that the school, how did this come about? And what exactly was the question again? I'm fascinated by this, but
Micah,
make sure I answer it. Yeah. Go ahead.
If you want to expand on this, please, very briefly, because we're running out of time.
Okay, Jess, well, right now here in Mexico, well, the programs are called La Nueva Escuela Mexicana, and what they do is that they make like community projects, let's say, and well, we have like to make a diagnostic about the context and try to solve a problem that is in the community, and we have like to learn through doing this project.
I love it. This is very Freirean. This is very much critical pedagogy. Who initiated this? Was this teacher led, something that happened within a single school, or is this a government idea?
Yeah, government idea. It's something new, and each teacher has to make its own project based on the
Oh,
need
okay.
of the context.
Excellent. Amazing. Let me know how it goes.
Okay.
I'm very curious. That's an amazing initiative by the government. But again, I think eventually the teachers, like, yeah, they are the ones that have to develop the programs, and eventually they'll know what's really needed in their community, and hopefully lead this program.
Well, thank you very much. On behalf of everyone here, I would like to thank you for such an inspiring and thought-provoking presentation. Thank you very much. And for the rest, we're going to come back at 11:30 for the next round of sessions that we're going to have. And thank you all for being here today.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you. Really appreciate it. Have a good day.
You too.
Thank you.